Judd here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to set up an FX server, and more specifically a FiveM server on Linux. As you can see on my screen, we're using Linode's dedicated 4 gig plan, which is a dedicated server with 2 dedicated CPU cores and 4 gigs of RAM. Plenty for starting out, especially if you're still in the beginning stages of development. We're also using Ubuntu Server 22.04.1, which is the latest server version for Ubuntu. So let's jump into it. Once you have your Linux server ready, you'll of course need to SSH into it, like I have done here already. I am using MobaXterm because I like being able to view the directories and such, as you can see on the left, while I'm working in the terminal, but feel free to use things like PuTTY or whatever terminal you feel like using. It doesn't really matter. So the first thing you should do with any Linux server is check for your basic updates, and with Ubuntu or any Debian-based servers, we're going to want to run apt update and then apt upgrade. So let's go ahead and do that. So one thing to note is I am logged in as root, so I will not need to run sudo before any of the commands I'll be running. You may need to do this, and also for better security, you might actually want to create another user and run stuff as that user and utilize sudo that way, but that's not my business here. So after everything is updated and upgraded, we will then install mariadb. So we are going to do apt install mariadb-server, like so. Just going to clear that out. And the next command that we're going to need to run after that is mysql _secure installation. And you're going to need to put in your current root password as it's mentioning here. So go ahead and do that. And this stuff should be self-explanatory. Just read it and make sure that the options that you're checking here are what you want to do. So as this says, you already have your root account protected, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to click no, or we're going to choose N for no. And we're going to do N here as well. And yes, we want to get rid of the anonymous user. We don't want it. And we are going to be changing this, but for now, we're just going to do yes, because that's how you should normally set up your databases on here. And we're going to remove the test database and access to it. And we're going to reload the privilege tables. All right, beautiful. So we're just going to go into our database now by doing mariadb. And so the next part I need to stress is it's very insecure. We're going to open up the ability to connect to our database remotely so that we can utilize HeidiSQL, which just allows us to work with databases significantly easier. You can alter this command by changing the % to your public IP, which is a little bit better, but unless you have a static IP at home, that IP is most likely going to change at some point. And we're also going to be adding a line in our Sql config. It's a bind address, which you can just remove later to kind of disable this. But really, if you want to utilize Heidi, which I highly suggest, you'll want to figure out something else, whether it's setting up a VPN to your server, so you're on the same network there, and then sorting out your connection that way. That's not what this tutorial is for. Figure out your own OPSEC for that. I'm not your mom. Okay, so we're going to first run the following. And basically, we are creating the user Judd, and the percent just means we can connect to this with any IP, and none of this matters. This password doesn't matter here because the server is not going to exist. It's just random. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. And after we run that, we need to flush privileges. By default in your SQL configuration, it's basically the database is bound to your local host, but by changing it to quad zeros for the bind address, that essentially allows us to connect with also adding the grant permissions that we just had done. So anyways, to edit the SQL config, we are going to run the following: nano, and then the directory, which is etc/mysql/my.cnf. And that's basically just going to open up the nano editor so we can edit the config for this. So you're just going to arrow down, and we are just going to add bind address equals 0.0.0.0, and we're going to do Control X on Windows, Y, enter. And we're going to want to restart MariaDB so those changes can take effect. We'll do that. And if we just want to check the status again, we can just run the following command again. All right, we are good there. So now we're going to come over to Heidi. Copy that. We'll go here. We're going to go Judd again. We're going to put the password in. We don't need to worry. We'll just save it. Yes. All right. And we are now connected to our MariaDB. And instead of worrying about doing a bunch of other stuff in the terminal, we can now just create our database that we'll need for our FiveM server right in Heidi SQL. So if you just come up here, right-click, create new database, and we'll just call this tutorial FiveM. Okay, and now we got our new database here for our FiveM server. So now it's time to actually get the FXServer stuff going here. So you can, of course, come here and follow all these instructions here. It's essentially what we're doing. We're just making a couple of changes. And yeah, let's move forward. So first, we're going to need to create a directory for the server. So we're just going to do mkdir space -p and then the path that we want. So I have FXServer/server. I'm going to do that. And then we're just going to cd into that directory like so. And thanks to using MOBA-xterm, we can come here and we can see that our folder has been created. And that is beautiful. Okay. So now what we need to do is we actually need to grab the FXServer files. And just like the instructions say here, we want to get the most current build. So you'll click here on the Linux server build listing. Come here, right-click, copy link address. And that link address we're going to use with wget. And we're just going to wget and the link to the latest build there. It'll download. And again, since we're in MOBA-xterm, at least I am, I can refresh. We can see that it downloaded the files here. Now to extract these, we are just going to untar them. And since we're already in this directory, we can just do tar.xf fx.tar.xz. And we'll give that a second. And again, since we're in MOBA, we can just refresh and we can see that the file's extracted. And I'm just going to delete that because I don't need that anymore. When it comes time to needing to update these files, you do the same thing. Wget, get the latest build link, and you would just run tar dash xvf. So it'd be like this. And that'll overwrite the files once you re-download that in there. Okay, so onward. Now we need to clone the basic CFX server data. And we're also going to create a server-data folder. And all we need to do for that is git clone and the link to the server data there, the git link. And again, all of this is right in the docs here. Git clone. We're basically just doing this. I just changed the directory slightly. Okay. And we're going to run that. And we'll come here. We can see our server-data folder has been created. Beautiful. And we are just going to cd into there. And the next steps will be creating our server CFG. Okay, so we are just going to do nano FXServer / server data / server.cfg. Enter. And we are just going to copy this example configuration from the FiveM docs here. I'm just going to paste them in. And obviously, there's going to be things in here that you're going to want to change here. And once you're done changing whatever you need to do in that, Control X on Windows, Y, and we'll write that. So now we have our config. Now to get things running with txadmin, which is probably going to be the easiest route for anyone, especially if you're just starting out. The command that we need to run, actually, we need to cd into FXServer / do we need to do that? We might not. We're just going to stay here, and we're going to run this command. Screen space / FXServer / server / run.sh. And that is going to get things moving there. 4470. Okay, so after all that stuff there, now we're in the usual txadmin stuff. We're just going to go through this, go next, do whatever you're going to do here. Deployment type, obviously, this is going to all depend on what you're doing. For the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to do popular recipes, and we're just going to do CFX. Actually, I want to show you an example of making that connection to the database. So hurts me to do this, but do ESX that. Run recipe deployer. Woohoo. Next. License key. Obviously, we need a license key. All right, so we are going to need to make our connection here. And of course, you're going to want to make all your changes to all this crap. We're not going to do that right now, so we're just going to save and run server. And beautiful, everything's coming up. And you will notice with Linux, restarting your server is so much faster than on Windows. it's quite amazing. Yeah, I believe that should be it. If you have any questions, I'm not going to answer them. It should have been straightforward. Again, you can refer to the FiveM docs. It's not that hard. Yeah. Good luck, and hopefully this helps some people out with being able to visually see how this is done. All right, I'm off. Enjoy. Goodbye. I'm leaving. Okay, now I'm gone.